What up, guys? So recently I did a video where I was talking about two black belts rolling, and one of the black belts injured the other black belt, ended up tearing his pec. Now, again, I gave you some ideas on like training stuff on that video, but I wanted to talk more about the actual specific pec tear. So I've got my buddy Eugene here, who's one of my black belts. He's also a physical therapist. He's a doctor of physical therapy. He knows his stuff. He's also the guy that, you know, for the last, you've been here for 14 years now. For the last 14 years, maybe 15 years, 2009.
Been a long time.
Long time. Anytime I have injuries or whatever, that's the guy I go look to. Hey man, what do I need to do to fix myself? So he knows his stuff about this this kind of thing. By the way, if you guys are ever interested, if something happens to you, get broken in jiu-jitsu and you need to fix yourself, talk to him, find him online, and he'll help you out. But with that said, we're gonna take a look at both the pec tear, like kind of how that's going on, like what's happening, what's causing it, where is it tearing, and then, you know, whether or not you should get it repaired. But then also we'll talk about how to finish an armbar more effectively and safely in the gym. So this way you can take care of your training partners, but you can also finish more armbars. So let's jump into it. All right, guys, so just kind of going over this again, this was the position that the person asked the question was talking about. And also, too, this is the position that I've seen several people get their pec torn from, where basically we're here in the armbar, the guy's got his hands together, he might have a bicep grip or whatever, and then the person's just yanking here at the elbow, right? Just pulling. And again, I've seen several pec tears from this, either from this point where the hand grip doesn't even break, still tears the pec, or at the very end, the arm sort of pulls back and boom, as it's going, it's tearing the pec. And again, my main reason for doing this is, again, I feel like, you know, part of my job as a jiu-jitsu person on the internet is sort of helping out a lot of you guys within your first several years of jiu-jitsu, or helping out people just understand some of the stuff that we don't talk about much in jiu-jitsu. And it's not like we don't talk about tearing your pec muscles or some of the dangers of submission very often. And so I just want to bring attention to this armbar seemingly being a safe submission. It's not safe. And also too, my buddy Eugene here can explain this stuff better. So let's talk about first, like, why the pec's tearing, how it's tearing, some of the stuff going on, and then also I'll show you guys a better way to attack the armbar should they have a defense like this. So take us through, Eugene. So we're here in the position.
So
what's
the
going on?
pec muscle, we got a couple attachments kind of at the collarbone and sternum, but the main tear usually occurs from the arm, the humerus here. All that big tissue attaches and kind of attaches in here. Chewy, pull on my arm and you can kind of see.
So real quick, so the pec, you have this big attachment points right here,
Yep.
down here, and then right here, right?
All in here, and then it goes right into the shoulder, into the arm. And the arm, essentially the pec is going to do an inward movement like this and a rotation with the arm like this. So adduction and internal rotation essentially is what it's doing. So I'm going this way and Chewy's doing the opposite. And so that's why. So if he pulls, and you can feel, I'm going to resist him. You can feel it. See that little ropey area?
That muscle's getting tight, like right there.
Yeah.
I can feel that all of a sudden, like getting tense.
Yep, right there.
And you can see it's like his pec right here. So as I begin to pull, right, you can see the pec flexing here, and then here.
Yep. And so the tear, there's so much attachment, it's so strong here, but all that tissue attached into a smaller point into where the tendon attaches into that bone in the arm, and that's the kind of weakest area, and that's where it tears from.
So essentially what you're saying is like right here on the pec major muscle here, there's like a bigger attachment point here, but then the smallest attachment points here. And so when we do this big like yank, it's causing such an explosive like sort of movement, that quick stretch and quick like power there, that basically the weakest point's going to go, and the weakest link here is going to be that attachment over here.
Yep. And it's that tendon. So where that tendon is where the muscle and bone attach, or they meet right there, and that's usually the weakest point. That's where it tears from. You'll hear a pop, you have pain, you could have like a depression in there, and even like, you know, obviously swelling, but then you could see like a lot of weakness will ensue as well. You can put it weak in there.
So Eugene, if someone has like what they think is a pec tear, right? They're rolling, they feel a pop, in their thing. Maybe they have some bruising. Maybe they feel like the muscle sort of retracted back. Should they see a doctor? Should they wait it out a little bit? You know what I mean? Like, because again, jiu-jitsu people, like in general, are kind of, we all tend to be knuckleheads because we're just a bunch of mat addicts, right? Yeah. We want to be on the mats. But is it imperative that they, like if they have a pec tear, they think that they get to the doctor really quickly, or is it one of those things where you can kind of wait a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm here as a resource, like, I try to give people suggestions, help them out, but like without a doubt, go see somebody. Right, like as soon as
See
you can.
somebody? Who kind of somebody? Who kind of somebody?
Go see a doctor. Get it assessed, get it looked at. They may have to do some imaging.
Yeah.
They'll usually know, like, hey, this is something that needs more assessment essentially. So go see a doctor. Obviously, have them take a look, have them see what's going on. Because if you wait too long, it's going to be harder to treat this thing. The recovery is going to be harder. If you're waiting, like, I'm going to see if it gets better in a month. In a month, it might be, probably not too late, but it's going to be a lot harder for them to get that muscle back into a good position where they can, heal properly.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. So after let's say if it's a pec tear, right? So after that pec tears and it's retracting back, the longer you wait, sort of that muscle sort of shrivels up, and it gets harder and harder to pull it back. Because essentially what they've got to do is they've got to pull that muscle back and strap it down to the humerus and then lock it into position. So if it's torn, it'll shrivel up, and then it gets harder and harder to do that.
Yeah,
right?
and then you've got like a less range of motion. You're going to feel more stiff. It's going to be more tension on that repair site. So you want to get it taken care of as soon as possible.
Okay, and then for like, let's say that for athletes, is there any way to get by, or is it like they really need to get it done? Because I've seen people who have let their biceps tear and they never get them fixed. I've seen even people have a pec tear and they never get it fixed. You know what I mean? So can you get by with it, or is it something?
Yeah, so getting in the weeds, the bicep is a little bit different because it's not the main elbow flexor. So you actually have other muscles in the elbow that can flex and do the majority of the work. Okay. However, the pec is important in this, call it cross arm adduction. So this adduction
bringing
position,
your arm
across.
Like this, right?
So essentially, you're going to lose quite a bit of strength. You're not going to be able to push very well. You're going to be able to grip and hug as well. So it's important. For jiu-jitsu, it's huge.
Yeah.
So I think
so much of what we do in jiu-jitsu is bringing our arms in.
Well, and hugging or pressing away or making frames. So it's going to be a big detriment to you. So you have to, I think, if you're an athlete, you're fairly young, you want to get full strength back, you got to get it fixed. Otherwise, you're going to be struggling with that arm.
Now, if someone does get a pec tear, right, like to get a pec tear and they're getting ready for surgery, what's the sort of trajectory of coming back to training? Like, what is that looking like?
Usually about earliest 6 months, but usually 8 months, maybe even a year. It just depends on your age, the severity of your tear, kind of your recovery, how that goes. Also, if you follow the guidelines, don't do too much too soon to kind of slow yourself down, because some people feel pretty good and they want to overdo it. That can set yourself back. So follow the guidelines, follow your medical provider's advice. They've kind of done this before, they know, so don't feel like you can do it on your own. Yeah.
And then, the last thing I'll ask you is, again, obviously, proper training practices, taking care of each other, that's key. But what can you do on your own to try to mitigate, tears? Is there anything that people can do to try to mitigate those factors?
There's a lot of stuff. Number one, make sure you have good range of motion, good strength. So I think we talked on the podcast numerous times about strength conditioning, the value of that. I think you have to have good strength.
But lifting, but full range of motion.
Full range of motion.
So that's a big one. That's something that a lot of times if you go into the gym and you're all about lifting the heavy weight, sometimes you can ego lift a little bit and you get rid of that range of motion. But I know that as I'm getting older, I know I've feel so much better because of getting into a deep squatting, pausing, or making sure that I'm getting the full range of motion in every lift. And I feel like it's improved my my mobility 100%. From doing that. Even though I'm not going as heavy and maybe I'm not as strong, I feel like I have more usable strength for what I'm building.
Right. And the other thing is you want to strength train in the positions you're vulnerable in. So if you're vulnerable here, this is the weak point. You want to strength train full range of motion. You want to work in those ranges that you have vulnerability, you might get injured in. So you don't want to just, like you said, ego lift here. Nobody gets injured here. It's usually at these end ranges. Yeah. Right. So strengthen it at your end ranges, full range of motion. Do controlled movements. Work to those ranges. I think it's really important, especially the more movement you have and the more control you have at the end ranges, the less likely you are to get injured. And the less severe, hopefully, the injury will be if you do kind of get in a compromised position.
Right, because I guess that's the issue, right? It's a lot of times when we're at those quick movements, we don't have the strength to support it.
Right.
That's where a lot of times these injuries come from.
And listen to your body. If you're man, I've got something that's nagging me, or take some time off, or modify your training, how hard you're rolling, do some drilling instead. It's okay to fluctuate your intensity of your training. Some people just feel like they're feeling good and they want to train hard all the time. You need those deload weeks too sometimes. Yeah. And, I think it's important, just like with weightlifting, you need some deload weeks, lighter weeks. So I think it's important to do that to let your body recover too.
All right, guys, so let's take a look at the arm bar, and we'll talk about a better way to finish the damn thing besides yanking your partner's arm out of socket and tearing their pec. All right, guys, so finishing the armbar. If we're gonna finish this armbar, be a little bit more efficient, opposed to just like yanking this damn thing and being a knucklehead, here's what we're gonna do. So think about like the armbar, and again, we're here talking so we can take a little bit of time with this. So think about the armbar here. All of this is solid, right? The arms here, this is all solid stuff. And sure, maybe if I'm much stronger than him, I might be able to break that grip. But if I can find a way to attack the arms and attack this grip here in a way that's going to mess this up, and that's going to be the better way to do it, right? Because this is going to be the non-solid part of this lock. So from here, when we're getting into the position, there's a lot to the armbar, right? And again, I'm scratching the surface here because again, I will sometimes hold angles and things like that to pin the person down. But what I'm going to do here is try to put him into a weak position, right? So again, if his arms are down like this, he's in a relatively strong position. You're watching at home right now. Just take your hands, put them together, and hold your hands to your stomach. You feel pretty strong here. If I was picking up like a stone, I remember I used to do strongman back in the day, and when I would pick up a stone, you'd hold the stone right here, like close to your stomach low, and you'd walk with it. You wouldn't hold it up like this, right? With that said, I want to put him into that kind of angle here because this is a much weaker position. At the same time with his arm, Eugene is going to be relatively strong in this right here because he got that bicep here, got his pec, he can hold. But if we start to go at this angle, right, now he's like, this is like the little rotator cuff muscle exercises that guys do at the gym with like a 2.5 pound plate. Very weak, right? They're not very strong here. And so this is kind of the up and then out to the side is what I like to do. Now, how do we accomplish that? It's not that too difficult. And again, there's a lot to this, just touching the surface right now. Either way, I want to attack the wrist. So what I'll typically do is I'll try to attach his wrist into the pit of my elbow here. So then now it's attached to my body. Now from here, I can begin to rock towards the face and then attack. Now notice what's happening. We're going up and at an angle here, and it's becoming harder for him to hold, and we can break. And again, even here, if he was really holding, if I get into this position, this is incredibly tough because the angle to hang on to. And then from there, we can straighten out nice and slow to get the finish. There are some cases too where I'll tuck this elbow in, and again, I'll hook just like this and scoop. But again, the idea is nonetheless the same. We're going after the lock here, attacking, pushing this out, not yanking and then tearing our partner's pec where they're out for a year, right? So again, that's just a general idea. While we're not getting to a specific armbar, I'll do another armbar video for you guys sometime soon. But just understand when you're finishing this, we want to attack the wrist. We want to attack this weak point of the lock here, not the solid part, which is very strong, to break the armbar, be more effective, and be safer. So hopefully that helped you out, maybe gave you a couple ideas to chew on regarding the armbar. One, to be safer with it, just to keep your training partner's health in mind. Again, it's really important if you guys have a submission on someone, there are no safe submissions. Always keep the health of your training partner in mind, because again, everybody says it, it's kind of cliche, but it's true. If you break all your toys, you got nothing to play with. And if you're one of those guys that's ripping arm bars, you're probably going to have a hard time finding rolls. Now, if you guys want to follow it with my buddy Eugene here, where can they find you, Eugene?
Social media on Instagram is the Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, you can't do it on Instagram. You're in jail.
I am in jail. I'm gonna be out of jail in a little bit. So
he's in jail for something so stupid, so silly. Social media sucks. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So if on Instagram, if you want to shoot me a message at the Jiu-Jitsu Therapist, or on YouTube, I have a ton of content on there. The Jiu-Jitsu Therapist.
Yeah, if you guys are interested in keeping your body healthy, or if you have an injury that pops up, this is the guy to talk to. So thank you guys for watching the video. Talk to you next time.